The 8th house, or Randrabhava, Transformation, Secrets, Rebirth, Gemini Rising, Part 1. The depth that refuses to be explained. Gemini Rising approaches life with curiosity, agility, and mental versatility. Governed by Mercury, this ascendant is wired for logic, language, and constant learning. The identity is shaped through dialogue, networks, and a search for meaning in patterns. But the 8th house, Randrabhava, forces the Gemini native to go beyond data and into depth. Here we find Capricorn, a sign of endurance, boundaries, karma, and responsibility. This is the mirror that resists quick answers. Where Gemini is quicksilver, Capricorn is stone. Where Gemini seeks stimulation, Capricorn demands integration. This is not a house for the clever, it is a house for the committed. Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, brings themes of control, fear, legacy, and structure into the hidden realms of life. This placement means that for Gemini Rising, transformation doesn't come through sudden upheaval. It comes through long-term accountability. Loss isn't dramatic. It's quiet and persistent. The crises they face are slow-burning. Responsibilities that build over time, emotional burdens that calcify, or secrets they carry for years before they are ready to process. But when they do, the growth is profound and irreversible. Gemini seeks variety. Capricorn demands endurance. While Gemini Rising thrives in change, Capricorn in the 8th house introduces karmic gravity. The native may experience a strong sense of duty within intimate relationships or carry ancestral burdens around money, family secrets, or sexuality. There can be a tendency to intellectualize emotional pain or avoid discomfort through humor and distraction. But Capricorn refuses shortcuts. Pain must be metabolized. Power must be earned. And healing becomes possible only when responsibility is accepted. This axis, Gemini to Capricorn, is about the maturation of intelligence. The Gemini mind learns to bear weight, to stay with difficult questions instead of skipping ahead. Emotional resilience replaces mental agility. The more the native resists the need to explain everything, the more they begin to understand everything. Saturn as Lord, the architect of inner gravity, Saturn, as ruler of Capricorn, brings a sobering influence to the 8th house. It introduces delays, tests, and discipline, but also unparalleled mastery. For Gemini Rising, Saturn's placement indicates the karmic terrain of their transformation. If strong, it brings steady recovery from emotional wounds and the power to structure healing for others. If weak, it may create fear of intimacy, emotional suppression, or guilt around shared resources. The task is to stop thinking their way out of pain and start building within it. These natives often transform through long-term projects, therapy, financial planning, or caring for others during chronic hardship. Their wisdom is hard-earned and often becomes their greatest resource. They are not destroyed by time, they are forged by it. Emotional landscape, from cleverness to commitment. Emotionally, Gemini Rising may feel most challenged in this house. The tendency to move on, joke, or detach when things get too heavy doesn't work here. Capricorn forces a confrontation with the darker corners of the psyche, fears of loss, betrayal, abandonment, or failure. These fears don't erupt suddenly, they haunt in silence. But through facing them, the native gains emotional integrity, maturity, and an ability to hold space for others. This is also a deeply sexual placement. The 8th house governs shared energy and physical merging, and Capricorn's presence means the native may take intimacy seriously, often after delays, failed trust, or guarded beginnings. They don't fall easily, but when they do, they fall with the full weight of karmic depth. Activation years and turning points. The 8th house activates for Gemini rising at ages 8, 20, 32, 44, 56, 68, and 80. These are not always dramatic years, but they are deeply formative. At 20 or 32, the native may confront themes of sexual identity, family legacy, or financial maturity. At 44 or 56, they begin to take ownership of what they once avoided, becoming healers, guardians, or mentors for others going through similar darkness. These periods may also coincide with a deepening of faith, not in belief systems, but in the slow work of inner reconstruction. Each activation year asks, will you avoid this truth or build with it? From multiplicity to mastery. Ultimately, the 8th house for Gemini rising teaches that depth is not the opposite of lightness. It is the foundation beneath it. Capricorn offers the slow, stabilizing gravity that Gemini often needs to turn ideas into wisdom and curiosity into compassion. Here, the mind doesn't escape pain. It learns to navigate it with structure, clarity, and a sense of purpose. This is the house where Gemini Rising stops searching for what's interesting and starts becoming what's enduring, where grief becomes a form of growth, and where the mind, once restless, finds its anchor in the quietest of emotional responsibility. The 8th house, or Randrabhava, Transformation, Secrets, Rebirth, Gemini Rising, Part 2. 8 most transformative conjunctions in Capricorn, the weight of truth and the discipline of depth. For Gemini Rising, the 8th house lies in Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, the planet of time, limits, and karmic consequence. The airy, curious, and mentally agile Gemini ascendant is thus required to descend into a terrain that is slow, heavy, and structured. Transformation is not explosive here. It is layered, prolonged, and deeply binding. Every conjunction in this house demands maturity, accountability, and inner construction. The following 8 planetary pairings represent the most transformative forces Gemini Rising can experience through the Capricorn 8th house, where crisis becomes architecture and silence becomes strength. Moon and Saturn, emotional endurance or frozen intimacy. This sobering conjunction fuses emotional need, Moon, with karmic restraint, Saturn. For Gemini Rising, it can bring delayed emotional expression, early experiences of abandonment, or a lifelong struggle with trust and intimacy. If benefic, it grants a calm, grounded presence in the face of trauma, ideal for therapists, caretakers, or counselors. If afflicted, emotions may calcify into fear, shame, or suppression. The lesson, vulnerability, must be practiced, not avoided. Holding space for one's own pain becomes the root of real healing. Sun and Saturn, ego tested by time or identity, crushed by duty. Here, the sense of self, Sun, is shaped and sometimes burdened by responsibility, Saturn. For Gemini Rising, this often manifests as inherited duties, family karma, or early life roles that require them to grow up too fast. If benefic, this conjunction results in strong leadership in crisis, able to handle other people's resources or guide others through transformation. If afflicted, the ego may feel starved, invisible, or crushed under expectation. The transformation lies in detaching from recognition and anchoring the self in integrity. Venus and Saturn, devotion through discipline or love withheld. This pairing links love and responsibility in the realm of intimacy and shared resources. For Gemini Rising, relationships may carry a karmic heaviness, marked by duty, endurance, or delay. If benefic, it creates deeply loyal, emotionally resilient bonds built on mutual effort. If afflicted, affection is earned rather than freely given, and desire may be repressed. Sexuality becomes something that must be deserved. The lesson, love is not a transaction. It is a commitment to emotional presence, even when difficult. Mercury and Mars, tactical psychology or verbal suppression. This conjunction brings strategy, Mercury, and assertion, Mars, into Capricorn's underground. For Gemini Rising, it sharpens the ability to think clearly in crisis and speak courageously about difficult topics, especially related to trauma, money, or emotional power. If benefic, the native becomes a surgeon of the psyche, cutting through confusion with fierce clarity. If afflicted, communication may become cold, combative, or overly controlled. The transformation occurs when truth becomes a tool for healing, not for dominance. Sun and Ketu, ego dissolution or silent sovereignty. When the Sun, identity, is joined with Ketu, detachment, the self is forced to release titles, recognition, and surface-level power. In Capricorn's 8th house, Gemini Rising may feel invisible or disconnected from their own authority, especially within intimate dynamics or legacies. If benefic, this results in quiet spiritual mastery, wisdom gained from solitude and crisis. If afflicted, the native may suffer from identity confusion or lack of personal direction. The gift lies in realizing that presence doesn't need applause, it needs truth. Moon and Mars, emotional willpower or subconscious volatility. This pairing fuses instinct and passion beneath Capricorn's surface. For Gemini Rising, it can generate suppressed rage, intense emotional defense mechanisms, or passive-aggressive coping in relationships. If benefic, it channels into inner strength, sexual vitality, and the ability to take charge of healing processes. If afflicted, the emotional body becomes reactive, tense, or resistant to intimacy. The transformation here is learning to respond with inner authority, not reaction. Jupiter and Saturn, expanding structure or belief under pressure. This rare conjunction places growth, Jupiter, inside boundaries, Saturn. In the 8th house, it speaks of inherited philosophies, karmic debts involving wealth or ethics, and long-term patterns of spiritual development. For Gemini rising, this creates a destiny that matures slowly, wisdom forged through trials. If benefic, the native becomes a guide, reformer, or structured healer. If afflicted, they may feel blocked by dogma, institutional weight, or chronic guilt. The soul learns that discipline doesn't stifle expansion, it shapes it. Venus and Ketu, detached intimacy or sublimated desire. This conjunction dissolves personal pleasure into something impersonal, mystical, or karmically complex. For Gemini rising, it may result in relationships marked by loss, spiritual tests, or erotic suppression. If benefic, the native loves with quiet depth and minimalism, finding divinity in emotional stillness. If afflicted, love feels ghost-like, always fading, never grounded. The transformation arises when affection is offered without expectation and desire is released without fear. In summary, in Capricorn's 8th house, Gemini rising learns that wisdom is not speed, it is structure. Each of these conjunctions pulls the native deeper into themselves, forcing them to sit with responsibility, time, and truth. Here, transformation isn't flashy, it is foundational. Through grief, inheritance, silence, and duty, the Gemini mind becomes a vessel not just of ideas, but of insight. The journey is not from chaos to order, but from explanation to embodiment. And in that still, stone-cut depth, the fragmented mind becomes whole. The 8th house, or Randrabhava, Transformation, Secrets, Rebirth, Libra Rising, Part 1, The Balance That Must Be Broken. Libra Rising seeks equilibrium, internally and externally. Ruled by Venus, the native navigates life through aesthetics, diplomacy, fairness, and meaningful relationships. Their identity is shaped by reflection, how they are seen, how they relate, how they are valued. But the 8th house, Randrabhava, brings them into the depths of Taurus, a fixed earth sign also ruled by Venus, but rooted in possessiveness, survival, and deep emotional attachment. This is the house where Libra's outer charm meets Taurus's inner grip, where harmony must surrender to transformation. Taurus in the 8th house challenges Libra rising to face everything they usually smooth over: unresolved emotions, possessive tendencies, inherited traumas, financial dependencies, and the primal fear of loss. This house does not allow surface beauty to substitute for inner substance. It draws Libra into territory where appearances fade, comfort is stripped, and what remains is the raw truth of attachment, desire, and identity. Libra seeks harmony, Taurus holds on. While Libra rising floats through life seeking peace and avoiding extremes, Taurus in the 8th brings intensity: emotional, financial, sexual, and psychological. The Libra native may attempt to maintain civility in partnerships even when emotional undercurrents scream otherwise. Yet this house forces them to confront what lies beneath: jealousy, grief, power struggles, hidden fears of abandonment, and emotional debts carried from family lines or past bonds. This axis, Libra to Taurus, is not about surface stability. It's about unshakable value. Libra rising learns that transformation isn't about aesthetic or social refinement. It's about emotional fortitude. Here, beauty cannot prevent decay. Only depth can birth renewal. Venus as Lord, pleasure and possession as pathways to power. Venus rules both the rising sign and the 8th house, creating a unique dynamic for Libra natives. The very planet that defines their social grace also governs their inner shadow. On the surface, they seek grace, balance, and charm. But deep within, Venus governs issues of emotional security, sexual connection, and shared material power. If Venus is strong, the native may navigate emotionally intense or financially complex relationships with refinement and emotional intelligence, capable of enduring and even healing crisis through trust and devotion. If afflicted, they may avoid confrontation, repress emotional needs, or attract relationships marked by emotional stagnation, codependency, or fear of loss. The growth here lies not in controlling outcomes, but in letting transformation work through them. Emotional landscape, from compromise to commitment. Libra rising prefers relationships where peace is maintained and conflicts are resolved gracefully. But in the 8th house, Taurus demands rootedness, emotional weight that must be felt, not negotiated. The Libra native must learn to stay with discomfort, possessiveness, and the instinct to hold on tightly even when the mind says, let go. This house also rules sexuality, inheritance, and emotional merging. Libra rising often encounters intense karmic partnerships where beauty and balance dissolve into hunger, loss, and catharsis. Through this, they realize that real connection does not fear death, does not require perfection, and does not always stay pretty. Activation years and turning points. The 8th house activates for Libra rising at ages 8, 20, 32, 44, 56, 68, and 80. These years may mark deep emotional shifts, relationship transitions, or major financial turning points. At 20 or 32, they may experience entanglements, romantic or financial, that force them to redefine self-worth. By 44 or 56, they often emerge with stronger boundaries, deeper emotional strength, and a refined capacity to love without losing themselves. Each activation is a mirror, asking, what do you hold on to? What are you afraid to lose? And what must die in order for something more authentic to live? From poise to power. Ultimately, the 8th house teaches Libra rising that not all beauty is visible, not all harmony is graceful, and not all love feels light. In this house, they descend into the soil of the soul, where value is reclaimed not through image, but through endurance. This is where emotional elegance is tested by emotional truth, where peace is forged, not painted, and where Libra rising becomes not just a mirror for others, but a rooted, resilient force of their own. The 8th house, or Randrabhava, transformation, secrets, rebirth, Libra rising. 8 most transformative conjunctions in Taurus, where attachment becomes evolution and stability is relearned. For Libra rising, the 8th house falls in Taurus, a fixed earth sign ruled by Venus, just like Libra itself. But while Libra expresses Venus through beauty, balance, and social grace, Taurus manifests Venus in solidity, ownership, and physical security. In the 8th house, these qualities are tested. Taurus brings deeply rooted attachment into a house of inevitable change. Libra rising, who often seeks peace and diplomacy, must now face the parts of themselves that resist change, crave control, or fear loss. The following 8 planetary conjunctions in Taurus represent defining moments of psychological grounding, emotional intensity, and spiritual reconstruction. Venus and Moon, emotional anchoring, or love as survival. This gentle yet potent pairing links affection with emotional memory. For Libra rising, this can bring a deep yearning for emotional safety and intimacy, especially in the realm of shared finances, sexuality, or long-term commitment. If benefic, it grants emotional steadiness, healing through affection, and loyalty that endures beyond outer charm. If afflicted, love may become possessive, or emotional fulfillment may depend on material or relational control. Transformation begins when the heart learns to be full without needing constant external validation. Venus and Saturn, bonded commitment or withheld warmth. This earthy conjunction makes love serious and intimacy long-term. In the 8th house, it brings karmic lessons around shared responsibility, emotional endurance, and financial entanglements. For Libra rising, this may manifest as intense partnerships that evolve slowly, where pleasure and vulnerability must be earned. If benefic, it bestows trust, patience, and unshakable loyalty. If afflicted, it leads to emotional coldness, fear of abandonment, or the inability to fully receive love. The lesson is to open where one usually protects. Sun and Mars, dominance and desire, or power struggles in intimacy. This fiery pairing within the fixed earth of Taurus can create heat that is both grounding and destabilizing. For Libra rising, it may show up as passionate sexual dynamics, control over shared finances, or the need to assert emotional willpower. If benefic, it fuels regeneration, helping the native take charge of their transformation. If afflicted, it may lead to possessiveness, financial fights, or combative energy in vulnerable partnerships. Evolution occurs when the native learns that power shared is stronger than power hoarded. Moon and Saturn, controlled emotion or emotional fortitude. Here, softness meets structure. In the 8th house, this pairing makes the emotional body slow, private, and intensely loyal. For Libra rising, it often brings emotional restriction in early life, where vulnerability was feared or denied. If benefic, the native becomes emotionally wise and capable of holding space for others' pain. If afflicted, they may shut down under emotional pressure or deny their own needs. The The transformation is in learning to stay present with discomfort until it yields wisdom. Mercury and Ketu, silent insight or disconnected communication. This conjunction removes the chatter and deepens the thought. For Libra rising, it brings intuitive knowledge of what is hidden, be it finances, emotions, or karmic patterns. If benefic, it lends deep psychological awareness and the ability to counsel, heal, or navigate emotional complexities without needing many words. If afflicted, it causes communication gaps in intimacy, difficulty speaking about pain, or intellectual isolation. Growth comes when the mind learns to trust feeling over analysis. Mars and Saturn, steeled control, or inner war. This slow-burning pairing tests endurance and reveals what happens when action is restricted. For Libra rising, it shows up as tension in shared decisions, battles over resources, or suppressed sexual will. If benefic, it builds unbreakable resilience, especially in crisis, trauma healing, or long-term financial planning. If afflicted, it creates chronic frustration, resentment in relationships, or fear of asserting oneself emotionally. True transformation comes when inner strength is no longer masked as silence. Sun and Rahu, inflated security needs or magnetic willpower. This dynamic pairing amplifies the need to feel in control of one's intimate and material world. For Libra rising, it may manifest as a hunger for security, status through inheritance, or power within deeply bonded relationships. If benefic, it brings strategic use of resources and bold self-expression during transformation. If afflicted, it may lead to greed, manipulation, or over-identification with possessions. The path forward lies in learning that true worth is internal, not external. Venus and Rahu, magnetic attraction or addictive intimacy. This conjunction intensifies desire, especially in the sensual realm of Taurus. For Libra rising, it may result in karmic entanglements, sexual obsession, or relationships that offer pleasure but challenge trust. If benefic, it fuels artistic talent, sensual awareness, and the capacity for emotional and financial magnetism. If afflicted, it pulls the native into patterns of over-attachment, seduction, or idealization. The key to evolution here is remembering that what is most beautiful must also be free. In summary, in Taurus's 8th house, Libra rising must learn to stop keeping everything beautiful and start keeping everything real. These conjunctions invite them to experience love, sex, money, and intimacy as arenas of soul-level growth. What begins as attachment becomes release. What starts as survival becomes transformation. The native is reshaped not by crisis alone, but by deepened presence in the face of permanence and loss. Here, Libra rising moves from surface harmony to inner integration, not just pleasing others, but knowing themselves. Not just keeping peace, but holding power. The 8th house, or Randrabhava, Transformation, Secrets, Rebirth, Aquarius Rising, Part 1. The vision that must enter the body. Aquarius Rising moves through life with distance, observation, and idealism. Governed by Saturn and traditionally co-ruled by Rahu, the native is often focused on systems, progress, and detachment from the emotional messiness of life. Their identity is built on ideas, collective relevance, and the belief that truth lives in objectivity. But the 8th house, Randrabhava, demands the opposite. For Aquarius Rising, this house falls in Virgo, the sign of precision and embodied detail. This is the mirror that grounds. Where Aquarius theorizes, Virgo specifies. Where Aquarius sees the pattern, Virgo reveals the flaw. In this house, transformation is not metaphysical, it is cellular. Virgo in the 8th pulls Aquarius Rising into the uncomfortable terrain of the body, of practical effort, of daily repair. It turns their attention to hidden patterns in health, sexuality, money, intimacy, and self-criticism. The native who thrives in abstraction must now descend into analysis, not of systems, but of self. And that analysis brings transformation only when it moves from head to gut, from theory to felt experience. Aquarius seeks detachment, Virgo demands engagement. Aquarius Rising values independence, rationality, and a certain coolness in emotional expression. But Virgo in the 8th creates intense psychological scrutiny, especially around relationships, trauma, and control. The house that governs secrets, pain, and power now operates through nervous sensitivity, critical thinking, and perfectionism. This native is asked to notice the details of what hurts, not just the architecture of why. This axis challenges their detachment by introducing hyper-awareness of flaws in the self, in partners, and in emotional habits. healing no longer comes from distance. It comes from uncomfortable intimacy with all the little things they'd rather overlook. Unresolved guilt, physical anxiety, inherited worry, and the need to fix what cannot be undone. Mercury as Lord, thought as a tool for purification. Mercury rules this domain, bringing the mind into deep psychological processes. Here, speech becomes surgery. Thought becomes introspection. Words reveal the wound. For Aquarius rising, the quality of their transformation depends on how consciously they observe their emotional and financial entanglements. If Mercury is strong, they have the capacity to counsel, analyze, and heal through communication, detail, and diagnostic understanding. If weak or afflicted, they become stuck in overanalysis, chronic worry, or the inability to release what cannot be perfected. This placement suggests that crises may arrive through miscommunication, criticism, betrayal through words, or even health-related secrets. But the same themes offer healing if the native is willing to listen, first to others, then to themselves. Emotional landscape, from abstract understanding to embodied humility. Emotionally, Aquarius rising often intellectualizes pain or bypasses it through humanitarian detachment, but Virgo in the 8th brings them back to the body, to the mess, the ache, the fatigue, the worry, the longing for order in an inherently disordered realm. The native may fear imperfection in intimacy. They may feel exposed when forced to explain or justify emotions, but they're also capable of incredible precision in healing once they surrender their ideal of emotional invincibility. In relationships, they may attract partners who are critical, anxious, or service-driven. These bonds test their tolerance for flaw, for compromise, and for emotional realism. Trust must be built, not imagined. Power must be negotiated, not assumed. And healing comes not through escape, but through presence with pain. Activation years and turning points. The 8th house activates for Aquarius rising at ages 8, 20, 32, 44, 56, 68, and 80. These years often mark crises involving physical or emotional health, deep relationship shifts, or psychological turning points that force a return to the body and its limits. At 20 or 32, the native may confront a breakup, trauma, or illness that demands inner reorganization. By 44 or 56, they often become analysts, healers, or quiet guides, those who've turned their own dissection into tools for others' transformation. Each cycle moves them closer to a grounded kind of truth, not theoretical, but lived. From vision to vulnerability, ultimately, the 8th house teaches Aquarius rising that not all knowledge is abstract. Some must be felt. Virgo reveals that transformation is not a lightning strike. It's a series of slow, conscious repairs. Through body, breath, word, and worry, the native learns that power is not detachment, it's discernment. And intimacy is not a theory, it is a lived, flawed, beautiful unraveling. This is where the rebel learns to tend, where the theorist learns to touch, and where Aquarius rising is rebuilt, not in the mind, but in the quiet courage of emotional detail. The 8th house, or Randrabhava, Transformation, Secrets, Rebirth, Aquarius Rising, Part 2. 8 most transformative conjunctions in Virgo, where precision dissects pain and the mind is forced to feel. For Aquarius Rising, the 8th house lies in Virgo, a sign of critical awareness, refinement, and grounded perception. In this house of hidden truths, psychological pressure, and emotional surrender, Virgo demands analysis before healing. Aquarius rising, with their natural distance from emotional chaos, must now confront the flaws and patterns they often ignore. The 8th house forces them into proximity with discomfort, emotionally, sexually, financially, and psychologically. Each conjunction in Virgo activates a specific layer of this confrontation, where the path to healing lies in detail, humility, and conscious presence. These 8 planetary pairings represent the core emotional surgeries that teach Aquarius rising not just how to know, but how to repair. Mercury and Ketu, detached thought or soul-level diagnosis. Mercury, ruler of Virgo, joins Ketu in a combination that fragments conventional thinking and sharpens intuitive analysis. For Aquarius rising, this creates a deep yet quiet capacity to analyze emotional complexity, especially in trauma or karmic bonds. If benefic, it offers psychic insight into buried pain and a minimalist approach to healing. If afflicted, it may cause detachment from emotional processing, difficulty speaking about trauma, or over-reliance on subtle, unspoken signals. The breakthrough lies in naming the wound gently, without fear of breaking the silence. Mercury and Saturn, structured perception or mental rigidity. This conjunction builds a disciplined, often rigid mind. For Aquarius rising, it gives the power to study patterns of crisis or loss with great precision, but may also trap them in intellectual fear. If benefic, it leads to mastery in psychological fields or trauma work, grounded communication, and deep responsibility in partnerships. If afflicted, it may create emotional coldness, obsessive worry, or guilt tied to logic and speech. Transformation emerges when the mind allows itself to rest and learns that not all pain can be explained. Sun and Mercury, sharp identity or ego through perfectionism. This pairing fuses personal identity with verbal intelligence. For Aquarius rising, it may give the urge to solve emotional complexity through intellectual control. If benefic, it lends confidence in discussing taboo subjects and strong insight into emotional power dynamics. If afflicted, it may tie self-worth to being right, creating control issues in intimate settings. Evolution comes when the mind softens, allowing the self to be understood rather than defended. Venus and Mercury, articulate affection or over-processed love. This graceful combination fosters verbal charm and thoughtful expression in love. In the 8th house, Aquarius rising may attract relationships that feel safe on the surface, but hide deeper emotional needs. If benefic, it supports healing through thoughtful service, shared rituals, and gentle truth-telling. If afflicted, it may indicate a tendency to keep emotions intellectual or relationships that never fully drop into vulnerability. The lesson is to let love be messy and to stay anyway. Mars and Mercury, verbal precision or mental combat. This sharp-edged combination brings assertive analysis and cutting insight. For Aquarius rising, it can create a forensic approach to understanding betrayal, intimacy, or power struggles. If benefic, it lends the courage to speak difficult truths and the capacity to lead in emotional emergencies. If afflicted, it may manifest as nitpicking, verbal aggression, or defensiveness in vulnerability. The transformation begins when words are used not to control, but to connect. Sun and Rahu, inflated self-focus or shadow integration. This conjunction magnifies the need to be seen in spaces that usually remain hidden. Aquarius rising may face intense identity tests involving sexuality, inheritance, or psychological control. If benefic, this grants courage to own their emotional truth and shine light into repressed areas. If afflicted, it may fuel perfectionism, ego-driven secrecy, or over-identification with being a fixer. The path forward is accepting imperfection as part of power, not its opposite. Venus and Saturn, loyal healing or affection under strain. This grounding pair brings love into the realm of emotional endurance. For Aquarius rising, it may indicate karmic relationships where affection must be earned, tested, or matured through hardship. If benefic, it leads to lasting emotional bonds, commitment through healing, and the beauty of patient intimacy. If afflicted, it can bring coldness, emotional reserve, or fear of vulnerability. The native must learn that love is not meant to be perfect, just present. Moon and Mercury, emotional clarity or nervous overload. This pairing links thought and feeling in a constant loop. In the 8th house, Aquarius rising may attempt to think through trauma or overanalyze grief. If benefic, it offers deep emotional intelligence, therapeutic insight, and healing through communication. If afflicted, it can trap the native in loops of doubt, self-critique, or avoidance through rationalization. The key transformation comes when the heart is allowed to speak, even if its words aren't polished. In summary, in Virgo's 8th house, Aquarius rising is taken on a journey from detachment to discernment. These conjunctions draw their attention away from the abstract and toward the intimate, the flawed, the vulnerable. Through crisis and discomfort, they learn that true transformation lies not in fixing what's broken, but in witnessing it without judgment. This is the terrain where perfection dissolves and precision becomes a form of care, where Aquarius rising stops theorizing their emotions and starts tending to them, and where the path to healing is not upward, but inward, through the small, repeated acts of conscious presence.